So, for context, everyone, I am. We're going to talk about neurodiversity, sort of neurodiversity, and I guess social disorders is how I would describe them.
Okay, this
Rather
should be
than,
fun.
yeah, rather than physical or diagnosed necessarily disorders. Um,
But
yeah,
but
exactly. Ecological approach,
okay, fair enough.
because we're talking ecological approach, but the medical field don't accept ecological psychology as a field. I mean, no one really accepts ecological psychology as a field apart from ecological psychologists. So,
Pretty much.
I was actually, before we get into it, I was listening to a conversation where from Vicente and Miguel were talking to a person, can't remember, about their book that was published in the Cambridge Press, what was it, 3, 4 months ago? And oh, my sister didn't shut the door. I'll shut the door in a second. And they were talking about it, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, you know the four E's: embedded, embodied, enacted, extended. Well, we don't think you need the four E's. We just think you need one, ecological." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." Because ecological came before all of those four, but people talk about those four and the A and the other E that I can't remember is called. And you're like, why not just ecological? And the host said, well, would that be a fifth E? And Vicente was like, no, just get rid of the others and just ecological. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna shut the door for a sec.
Yeah, which goes back to what we've always been talking about. Like, we always have these conversations about language, and then when we look in between the two, like we have the ecological approach and then the traditional cognitive approaches, we're always like, yes, but we could just say this. Yes, but we could just call it that, which is usually the exact same thing. Every single, it's an affordance. It's a constraint. It's ecological.
Yeah. It's a way of simplifying a lot of what is discussed and removing, I think, a lot of the barriers to some of the ways that you could help people because it's learning, it's developing, it's growing, however you want to describe it. So, bringing back some context. Uh, Online, there are various groups talking about various things, and ADHD and autism are hot topics in most conversations that I've seen online when it comes to neurodiversity.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity and neurodiverse can mean different things, and ADHD can mean different things depending on the person that's talking about it, and so can autism, so can OCD, which was recently on the news, which is something else that related to this conversation because there was a BBC News report, was it 2 days ago, 3 days ago? I was watching the news while I was eating lunch, and they said that OCD diagnoses have tripled in the last 3 or 4 years. And when I heard that on the news, I immediately thought, well, obviously, because of the way that we diagnose things that are in the DSM-5, we don't look at it through an ecological lens. Our framework isn't organism environment relationship, it is organism, somewhat ignoring the environment and the relationship we have with the environment. And over the last decade, the environment has drastically changed because of well, global warming, obviously life changes anyway because it's dynamic systems, plus technology, drastic changes. Technology has influenced most of society in significant ways. And so if you don't acknowledge the drastic changes in the environment and the relationship that's going to have with the way that we interact with the environment, of course, diagnosis is going to change, either be drastically less or drastically more. And because we are looking for issues, of course, as
Yeah.
organisms, we're going to struggle to adapt to start with, so the diagnosis is going to go up. Is that a good thing or a bad
Yeah.
thing? I don't think that's worth talking about. It's a thing that ecological psychologists would argue was fairly obvious, I think. Maybe I'm just,
Mm.
maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's fairly obvious.
There's so much changing all at once. Like it is a like it's massive. Like this is an environmental change that is huge. Like everything is different. Like so many things are just not the way they were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago.
Mm. I mean, AI's only been out, what, 2 years, really?
Mm,
AI
mm.
is still making drastic changes to the way that, well, everyone works, the way that society interacts.
Or it
All of,
doesn't.
yeah, but when you say it doesn't, it's still an interaction. It's still a
Yes,
measurable interaction. It's a measurable interaction that didn't happen.
happen.
So, yeah, silence is noise. So,
Mm.
non-interaction, i.e., someone deliberately choosing not to go out of their house because they don't want to feel XYZ, is a behavior that can be measured and
Yeah.
is arguably measured as part of a diagnosis of something that we can stamp a label on someone.
And I think something you said grabbed me around the thing that there's something wrong. It's the predetermined pre-assumption that something is wrong,
Mm.
which is the thing that kind of grabs my attention because it's like I just work the way that I work. And I think like the prevalence of ADHD, autism to a certain extent. Now, maybe this is because I am biased because I was diagnosed fairly early. I mean, of course I'm biased. I am biased. But like maybe it's
Everyone is.
because yeah, because like I find that the autistic space is less like talking about it all of the time. Whereas I find the ADHD like it feels less like what's the word I'm looking for? Like deterministic is not quite right. It's like that disabling. Disabling. Many autistic people who I speak to are just like, yeah, this is how I work. It's very
I,
black
th-
and white,
I
and is
think,
like, yeah, this is how things are. Whereas
yeah,
I find with like the ADHD side of things, and then we have the combined two together, there's a lot more like maybe it's fear of being broken. Whereas for for many autistic people, it's yeah, this is just how I think. I like it. I don't like it. It's annoying. It's fine. Whatever. Like, why are we talking about it? It took me, from my experience, a very long time just to talk about it. Not because I was embarrassed or ashamed or I feel like I shouldn't, but because it was just who I am versus it becoming everything about me. Which I think even a very long time ago, I still had that like, yeah, it's a thing, but I need to make it more of a thing because that's what society wants me to do. Does that make any sense? No, but I'm just going to do it because, let's just follow the social patterns so that I fit into those social patterns. Do I really care? And do I spend all of my time going on about how I'm autistic and probably ADHD too? Do I talk? No. Does it make that much difference? No. Is it funny? Yeah, kind of. But do I really care? No, no, I just work differently. Do I see it? Yeah, when I'm in an environment that I'm not used to, but then who isn't going to act differently when they're in a situation that they're not used to?
uh-huh. I think, obviously, for those that are unfamiliar, ecological psychology accepts more causes. It's not just linear causality, linear local causality. It's non-linear, non-obvious, multi-causality. So when I think about the potential causes and uh, elements that could influence the decisions, the way that I see the conversations online is the term ADHD and autistic are used somewhat interchangeably, um, but it's what the person has assumed is, oh, that's an ADHD thing and that's an autistic thing, which most of the time that I've seen it, are both wrong. Uh, um, and
And I
the
also think in especially in the business space, like in particularly autism is just lumped together with ADHD,
mm,
which is infuriating because the way we see the world is like I mean, it's different anyway, but just in the example of this societal framing, like the autistic experience is different from the ADHD experience. The symptoms that are attached to it are different. The way we interact is different. But
Uh, I
also,
th yeah, I think that relates to the other point I was going to make, which is around the stereotypical ADHD and the stereotypical autistic. The majority of people that I've seen talking about this are either older, like so 10 to 20 years old, which can vary. Most of their education has come from online and social media. So much of their education, I think, is misinformation. So I'm not putting
mm,
much stock in what they say. Then the older generations, I think, have lots of past experience of what it might look like or what it might like the experience might be like. And so when I listen to those that are typically older than 20 talk about autistic. They see the autistic person that is stereotypical. They are socially isolated. They're in a corner. They're not doing anything with anyone else, potentially being separated into a different school, into a different environment, which they don't want to be like. And then the ADHD is there's someone that is a bit quiet because they're inattentive or they're separating themselves or they're hyperactive and they're okay being more like that because it's closer to the normal that they want to be, but it's not so far away, which is a misunderstanding of what ADHD and autistic is.
mm,
And I think, again, this is me speaking out loud, and people might vehemently disagree, be screaming at me for it, but I think it's because of the experience they've had with what the label could mean and what could look like, that they want to try and separate themselves from the autistic label more than the ADHD label. What do you think?
mm. Yeah, I think so because the autism label itself is so like if we look at how autism is portrayed in the media, which is very much how many people educate themselves for better or for worse, you see the representations of like savants or like those who are socially isolated, and you have those two really massive ends of the spectrum when most autistic people can do this thing really well, this small tiny thing, but also don't get the opportunity to actually do that all the time. I'm thinking of like The Good Doctor as an example of an autistic person. Also, male or
Yeah.
like autism is covered more than female autism, which is different again, and blah 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 blah. But you look at that example, and it's a savant in a situation in an environment that has been completely constructed, to make good TV, and they get a lot. They get away with a lot more because they're allowed to in the TV show because it makes a good TV show. Whereas most of the time, the autistic will probably not do the thing or be somewhere else because they're like, yeah, I don't give a shit about what you think, and do different things. And so with that, it's like, oh, well, I'm unreasonable. I'm aggressive. I'm this. I'm that. Like the labels that are put on top of an autistic individual, whereas an ADHD individual is often portrayed as quirky or inattentive or just don't pay attention, and or we just need to control their attention. I'm thinking like. In school, there was a letter that was sent out this week that drove me insane. I was so angry. I was so annoyed. It's like, well, we're going to have a getting ready week where we're going to spend the week where everyone has to have all of their equipment for one whole week and they can't forget anything, otherwise they'll have an after school detention. And I'm like, do you do you do you really think that's going to work? Like, I know that my child will forget stuff because they forget stuff because they're children. And
I
an
mean, I wouldn't
after
say that's
school
a good reason, but I understand. I would use different reasons, but yes.
like how is punishing them going to help them do the thing? It won't. It won't work. You'll just have people fighting back against you and arguing with you because they think it's unreasonable and it's unfair, which it is. Because in the quote unquote workforce, if people forget something, then someone else will have something and will just give it to them. Or if they're disorganized enough and don't do a good enough job,
So me, when I was a student, when I say when I was a student, when I was at school, and the teacher would say something like that, I would be the when I was at school, I did not keep my mouth. Well, I kept my mouth shut until spoken to. But
mm,
as soon as I got told off and I knew it was unfair, I have reasons as to why it's unfair.
mm,
And I remember an English teacher. I think I was year eight, year seven, year eight. It was early into secondary school. And one of my pens had broken, like exploded in my bag. And I said I don't have a pen. And I got told off, and the teacher said you should have had a spare, and they gave me a detention. And I said, "Oh, okay. So when your pens break and you don't have a spare and you have to go to the other room, why don't you get a detention?" I'm like year seven, year eight at this point. And we got into this discussion. Uh, I remember this quite well. I won't go into all the detail, but we got into this discussion, and eventually she didn't give me the detention because she realised that it just wasn't fair. Her giving me a detention about something, one, I have no control over because I gave my other spare pen to someone else in the class, in the class before in science, and they were using that throughout the day. So I had a spare pen, but I gave it to someone else to be nice. And then the pen that I was using exploded in my bag, which I couldn't take control of. And when she doesn't have a spare pen or doesn't have a marking pen or just forgets her pens from the other classroom, she just goes gets one. But she gave me a detention for it. And we had this conversation back and forth. And then she just didn't give me the detention and gave me a spare pen. Thank you very much. Um, but in that sort of situation, because the situation you're in, if I obviously your kids are younger than me than I was, like I'm actually seven and eight, year
yeah,
seven and
they're
eight.
older.
Yeah, but well, no, year seven, so I would have been 11.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my two are older. They're in year nine.
yeah. So I would have had that conversation. Whether your kids want to have that conversation, I don't know. But I held the teacher accountable for the action, like making it make be fair. But me as an 11-year-old at that point, talking to this 20, 30, 40, I have no idea how old the teacher was, year old, like, how is this fair? Uh, and that I think shows I can't think of a better word, incompetence from the adults that are trying to educate and teach without an understanding
And
of
also, like,
psychology.
if their entire job is to educate the children, why don't they just provide some gosh damn pens? Like, and I get why, because obviously,
Kids
school
break it, throw
supplies.
it, yeah,
Yeah, I get it.
costs.
I get it costs. But if there is the potential for having pens, and the focus is on punishing them for not having the pens or the equipment, how is that teaching them a thing? Like,
I,
there's,
I think
there.
if I like look backwards and step out and think, okay, let's look at the organism environment relationship essentially as a system rather than the person in the pen. Let's look at the students in the school. Um, the school is trying to educate this thing. How can you educate this thing? There's lots of different ways. If you're
Mm,
saying there is only one way to educate this thing and it has to be through this medium, i.e., pen and paper, writing something down, okay, is there something else that we could have available? Are there other pieces of equipment that we could have available for people to either write on, or could you do it in pairs? Could you adjust the environment, adjust the lesson situation essentially? Like a whiteboard and pen that stays in the room, or technology that laptops or iPads. I know you're not allowed phones in some schools, but some people use phones. Or maybe you have excuse me, maybe you have a chalkboard on the wall or a big whiteboard on the wall. Like there's loads of other solutions to the problem. And if they don't like using the whiteboard or they don't like using the other options, they now have a choice. Do you use the whiteboard and the whiteboard pen and it potentially be shown at the front of the board or where everyone can see what you're writing? Probably not. How do you avoid that? Take a pen.
Yeah.
Like it's now you're giving the pupil the choice. Do you want to do this work in your own book, or do you want to do this work on a whiteboard that I give you, and then you have to rub it out? Or do you want to do the work at the front of the class where everyone can see? Probably not. So you're giving them the choice. And then if they do use the whiteboard at the front of the class, obviously then they could misbehave. If they misbehave, now they're going to get told off. And everyone sees that. But that's the person running the class being in control of the classroom in a way that
Mm.
doesn't involve physical abuse, which is what happened, obviously, I was going to say centuries ago, decades ago, not centuries, decades ago. Uh, and I think, I don't know if it would work, but I think it would help a lot of issues.
I think also the result of what's happening, like what they're doing, is taking like I don't know some extreme action on something that can be solved in multitudes of other ways.
Hmm.
Assuming that, let's take a jackhammer to a nail. Like it's just that the reaction doesn't make any sense because the kids won't. Some will, but many just won't because they don't care because they won't show up.
But if we do zoom out, I don't think it's the teacher's problem.
Oh no.
Like it is the teacher's problem because I think they should have been educated or trained in a way that they can adapt to these problems better than they currently can. And
Yeah.
that may sound a bit sensationalistic, but having been to conferences with many teachers, so many teachers are incompetent at solving what I would class as simple problems because of their education. I can think of multiple examples where teachers were sitting in a room listening to a lecture presentation about education, taking tons of notes, and then at the end of it, not understanding what was spoken about. And I'm like, you are the epitome of the problem that we have in the education system, and you are now going to educate classes in secondary schools in the same way. And I'm speaking with these people over lunch, and I'm like, oh, did you not hear that? Oh, no, I was writing notes on that. But you're expecting your students to hear you when you're talking and they're writing notes and you told them to write in their book? What? Doesn't make sense. So I think the teacher education system has room for improvement, but the amount of stuff that is is expected by the teachers, like they have a job, 100% of the hours, they're given like 150% amount
Oh
of work.
yes. Yeah.
They're given way too much, and they're expected to do way more than so many others, and not paid well enough for it. So the teacher job is extremely difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's layers that need to be changed and adjusted, and there are people campaigning for it, and they have been for decades and for years, uh, which is why I think homeschool education is growing. But why not use the tools that we have with the technology that we have to help solve this in a way?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I think kids should go to school rather than homeschooled because social elements, they need to be away from parents,
Yes.
they need to be talking with other people, especially people around their age, and to experience various things.
Yeah.
Because if
It's
you're
so
going to work in
important.
the workplace, you're going to have to interact with people that you don't like.
Mm.
Sorry, tough shit. The world is full of people you don't like. You need to know how to interact with them without making an explosion of the situation.
Yeah.
And that's what school is kind of for.
Yeah. Not to prepare you for a specific workplace, but to prepare you for the environment that you're going into.
Which is how sports coaches, the ecological approach to sports coaching, it's how they try and educate people to develop skills. They're developing sports specific skills, but also social skills in that context for the hour of a session. Why can't teachers do the same thing in maths class, science, English, art, whatever? Why can't they take an ecological approach to education in schools? I think, personally, that would be more effective. Would they get the grades? Maybe not, because the ecological approach has a longer learning curve to start with. Even when you look at the modern um, in the modern study, so like the 2025 study that came out with football, non-linear versus linear, the linear approach got better results to start with for the first, what was it, 2 to 4 weeks, and then the non-linear approach got better in the 8 weeks, and then non-linear completely outperformed the linear in the retention test. So it took them longer to get to grips with what was going on, but then they started performing better, and they retained that better performance for longer afterwards as well. So school, if they get tested right at the start or because of the amount of stuff they need to cram into a semester, the kids won't perform as well. Okay, yeah, you're going to get bad grades at school, but maybe if you reduce the curriculum and then have them do it for a little bit longer. No, term one and term two, they might not be better, but maybe term three, four, five, and six, they are better. Well, I would
Yeah.
argue that's a good thing. And then they can retain that for after school, maybe going into the next year, or maybe going into the workplace. I think that's more valuable, especially with the kids that already know what they want to do. If they
Yeah.
know where they want to focus, why are you forcing them to do all of these other subjects? Yeah, they should be aware of all of the other things, but let's be real. I haven't used music since I left school. I haven't used art since I left school. Most of the stuff that I've learned, I wasn't taught in school. The maths that I know, I learned in year seven. I don't use any of the other maths that I did. Like, why are we teaching it if it's not used? Oh, but it might be used. So might all this other stuff that you're not being taught. Sorry, going on a rant here. Um, use the ecological approach more, please.
It would make a big difference. Short term, no. Long term, it'd be
The evidence
crazy.
says yes.
Mm. But the evidence is tied into sport.
Most of it is in either sport or perception, sensation, etc., or philosophy,
Mm.
which, unless you're going to have an educator that is within perception, sensation work, which in the education system it won't happen unless they're a PE teacher. Again, that won't happen. Philosophy, which may happen as a like side module potentially. And then the skill acquisition is movement science, which comes from perception, sensation, or sensation and perception, whichever you want to call it, and Eleanor Gibson's work in development. So I think there's an easier transition into sport only because it's movement. But
Yeah.
you still have people like who is it? Dor Abrams, who does it in maths.
Mm.
Like people still are applying it outside of sport. And I guess cycling back round to where we started with the social disabilities, uh, it is interaction with other people. So, no, it's not education, but it's human behavior, which I would argue is education. What is
Yeah.
education fundamentally? One person talking to another person or communicating with another person about ideas. How does one person communicate ideas to another person? Through human behavior. What is the study of human behavior embedded in? Psychology. Hello. Like, it's not far stretched. It's not like you're trying to put astrophysics into a calendar app. Like, you don't have to make hundreds of connections.
Mm-mm.
But the education system makes it so. Uh, and where I want to pivot this slightly, because we went off slightly anyway towards education. I guess pivot it backwards. So we've gone off on a branch, and now we're going to connect it back to the main branch. Encoding GitHub reference here. Um, yeah. Um, with the neurodivergent label. And
Mm.
the ADHD and the autistic and the OCD, and with my hearing impairment and visual impairment, I think when I look at a lot of those labels, they aren't physical disabilities, they aren't mental disabilities. I think they are social disabilities
Yeah.
because they're granted, there are physical disabilities and mental disabilities. I do think they exist as a category or as a label, but I think the lines that we have metaphorically drawn through the medical diagnosis need is far too wide, far too broad, and I don't think they are useful.
Mm,
I think the majority of the disabilities that we are discussing are social disabilities.
mm,
Are there people that are autistic that you could describe as a mental disability? Yes, I would say.
yeah.
If we're going to put labels on it, yes. But I think that is at one end of the spectrum, at a very small end of that spectrum. I don't think it is the majority of that spectrum.
Mm,
Same with ADHD. I think there are people with ADHD that require a medical diagnosis, but I don't think it is the majority of people that are getting the diagnosis.
mm.
Maybe a hot take. I think the majority of people that are getting the diagnosis and like this, like self-diagnosed people, I'm not counting in getting the diagnosis. Getting the diagnosis is they've gone to a medical professional and they have said, you have ADHD enough for me to diagnose you. I still think the majority of those, when I say majority, I'm saying like 60% plus of those aren't because they have a physical disability or a mental disability. I think it's a social disability.
Yeah.
That's maybe hot topic. If I said that to
I
you a
don't know.
year ago, you would have exploded.
I'm not sure whether I would have fully exploded. I would have been like, whoa, that is a problematic thing to say. But also, I would have still paused and gone, I hate it, but yes. Like,
Interesting.
I don't know whether I would have exploded. Perhaps that's just because of now and where I am. But even at the beginning, I was annoyed by what you said. But I was like, you're not incorrect because it is true. Like to me, it does. Like I'm thinking a lot of my experience and my behaviors in the world, the environment around me are all based around people who are neurodiverse or neurodiverse adjacent. So most of the time, I'm the average.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer that one.
You,
I'm
you, you were going to
average.
say normal then. You're
Yeah,
like,
I was, and it really pissing me off. Like, I am average. But then I go to like a book club or a book signing with people of varying different like
tendencies.
experiences, and then I am not the average.
How do you know?
I don't. It's an assumption that I've made based on what I can see, but I am well, less likely to be the average. I don't know what the environmental factors are, clearly. Good challenge, love it. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm the average. I can't confidently say whether I'm the average or not. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Who knows? But when I have the conversations, I have to, like, I'm adjusting my behavior on the fly because how I would naturally, normally, comfortably respond in other environments may not be received as well. But then that in itself is a pre-assumed assumption. Instead of just doing exactly what I do normally, there is a layer there. And
I
this
can
is
I
layered
can see it. I can
conversation.
see it. As soon as you say something, you're like, I'm saying this, but I don't agree with this. I'm tying myself in a knot. I need to untie the knot. Damn it, I've
Yes.
now tied another knot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is kind of my living experience right now is untying all of these knots. Because I'm doing other things that are not attached to that are not like assumed to be attached to neurodiverse people. There,
Hmm.
pre-assumed.
Well, yeah. Um, so there was the other thing that I was going to add to that as well is when you said the average, obviously that requires a measure. And for there to be a measure, there needs to be tests and a
Mm.
start time and an end time, which when we look at it is the traditional approaches to science. You pick a start time, you pick an end time, you pick some metrics you're going to measure, you control for whatever factors, and then you try and find some linear local causes. which is not what the ecological approach or the ecological paradigm does. It looks at non-linear, non-obvious multi-causality throughout dynamic measures of time and to see whether there are interdependencies or not. And so when you say the average, you're immediately saying, okay, when I go out to the shop and I enter that shop door, and before I leave that shop door, I am not the average person if I behave in this way and
Mm.
not like that when compared to all these people that are also behaving like this, not like that, in this shop, at that. Like, come on. Like,
Oh yeah, it's exhausting.
yeah. And so using the neurodiverse, neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, all of those other labels adds all of these assumptions to
Yeah,
what is being said. And I think adding those assumptions to what's been said, even though what could have been said is, oh, I'm neurodivergent when I go to the shop, that adds all this other stuff, this
yeah,
pre-assumed stuff to that. And this pre-assumed stuff constrains, highly constrains what you're now paying attention to.
mm.
And because now you're paying attention to these things instead of those things, the outcomes are more likely to be I'm bad at this thing. I did this wrong.
Yeah,
This was a this was an awful experience. Because the pre-assumptions have added constraints, whether that is environmental constraints, task constraints, however you want to define constraints in this word, because other people may not be familiar with the constraints and affordances and
mm.
bifurcations of
Yeah,
the
that's true.
landscape, etc., etc. But yeah, so if you're just look, I'm imagining this as a tunnel, like a tunnel going forwards. If
Mm.
you start massive and you go, right, I've now got these pre-assumed assumptions, massive tunnel, narrowing into this one experience, well, now you've got an even smaller like exit, but the exit actually is still massive
But all
if you
you can
can
see is the tiny, tiny exit. Yeah,
exactly.
that is exactly my experience of going to new social environments.
I
It's
don't
the
think that's wrong. I think that's
no,
what everyone does.
yeah, and it's really interesting to see it like that because I'm like, yeah, that's like because I am more anxious there than I am like in this conversation. There is like the aspect of psychological safety, whereas I can just say what's going on here, and then when I'm at home or when I'm in a coaching environment, I just say what's happening because it's just, you know,
The relationship is different.
yeah.
And so when we went to Berlin and you were looking at me like, how are you so chilled, blah, 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 what I was doing and what I have been doing for years, this is my trick, if you want to call it a trick, is when I recognize I am highly constraining my behavior, I ask myself, why? And if there is no valid reason that I can justify for my highly constrained behavior, is I then go back to, I kind of like go back through the tunnel and like, right, let's walk backwards a bit. Let's come out of this and let's now reassess. Okay, I want to go over there. Oh yeah, actually, that tunnel down there, I don't want to take that one. I'll take this big one.
Mm,
And then move forwards. And it opens up more options. And the more you do that, the less likely you are to go through the small tunnel.
mm,
And now, like I know the small tunnel exists, but I'm like, why would I go all the way over there? There's no point doing that. But I still go down there sometimes.
mm,
But using this analogy, if it's not about walking forwards, sometimes I jump through the hole. I'm like, yep, I'm going all the way down into the sewage, and I'm going to go through that drain pipe. And then halfway through the drain pipe, I realize, you know what? It sucks down here. Let's not do this. Let's like drill upwards and run back to where I was. Uh, but you need to catch yourself
yes.
like that. I don't know whether
I'm
that
I'm
analogy
thinking
is
of that
useful,
like
but
yeah, I was thinking like yesterday because I had an experience when I was out. And it was also the first time that I was out on my own, because usually I have a friend or someone with me. So it was just me, which is the first time in a very long time. And also the first proper time in, well, who I am with no like constraints added to it put it that way.
No additional constraints. There's always
Yeah, no
constraints.
additional constraints. And so that was like I'm just gotta keep it small, keep it tiny. And then it's like, yeah, it's stupid little things. Like I am sat very uncomfortably right now. I don't want to move because just in case I misjudge the space around me because, depth perception and joyful sensing. And I remember at one point I was like, no, this actually is just really uncomfortable. I'm going to move, and if I bump into someone, I'll just go sorry and then I moved. So it's kind of a very tiny niche example of that, like getting out of the tunnel.
It's not tiny or niche. That is exactly it.
Mm,
That is behavior. It's ongoing.
yeah,
That's constantly what we're doing. It's
yeah.
not a niche example. It's a measured one.
Mm.
But
And it's
yeah.
quite an interest like that. I don't think I ever would have done that before. Like we were talking at the end of last session about what had changed, what's different now. And there's the big stuff. The big stuff is fun and exciting, transition and all that, big, big, big things. But also it's those small little things, those small shifts in behavior, which make everything different and make a
And
huge difference.
those quote small differences are actually what the diagnoses and the medical professionals are looking for. When they do the test, they're looking for the small behaviors. Are you OCD? Are you autistic? Are you ADHD? Well, if I if we do this, well, now I'm not doing those behaviors, so now I don't
Mm,
classify as whatever. And something I want to add because it is pretty significant is in the DSM-5, something that I feel is overlooked in media conversation is that the behaviors that you're exhibiting need to be debilitating. They need to be
mm,
impairing you in some way. If, however, you have developed skills and coping mechanisms, I hate that term, but coping mechanisms to function, again, don't like that term, in the world, in society, then you don't have ADHD, autism, OCD, because you are a functioning person, because the behaviors aren't debilitating. And I'm like, what a load of horse poo.
mm.
Like, it's just rubbish. Like, if you were exhibiting particular behaviors that could be impairing, then you should classify. If you don't classify, then there is an inherent issue with the diagnosis because there are pre-assumed or there are assumptions there that are being assumed before the diagnosis, which is constraining the outcome. Exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
Which means some people that may have struggles but have found solutions to those struggles now can't be diagnosed, can't get the quote help they need because they don't need that help because they've already found their own help. So,
yeah,
like when I think about myself, this is one of the reasons that I haven't and I don't plan on going to be diagnosed for either ADHD or autism, is because I don't have any quote issues. Do I struggle with the behaviors that are described in the DSM-5? Yes, the majority of them. But do I have skills and have I got a paradigm in the way that I view the world that helps me get through those? Yes. Do I still struggle? Yes. But everyone still struggles until they develop the skills in the new situations that they're in because the
yeah,
world is dynamic. So what is the diagnosis going to do? Give me a label. Great. What else could it do? I could be on medication. Why would I want to be on medication when I can solve the problems a different way?
yeah.
If there is a physical issue that medication would help with, i.e., my eye, yeah, sure, I'll take that. Because if I don't, I may go blind in both eyes. I don't really want to go blind in both eyes. That is
No,
a
not really.
that is a physical disability that I would rather not have, but I can't get rid of it. But when we look at the mental disabilities, yeah, exactly that look. What is a mental disability? I said yes, they exist. But I'm curious as to how you think I think they exist. Bit meta there, but
Cool, great. Love the meta question. Hmm. I suppose a mental disability is like you were saying before, when it is that extreme that it is. But then how do you measure that? Like, it is to the point where it is debilitating in every and all situations. It's kind of but even, I mean, I find the idea of a mental disability annoying anyway, but that's beside the point.
Well, think about it. If you're trying to think as mental as me, how do you think I would describe mental?
I'm not sure you would.
Come on, I'm not going to give a straight answer. Obviously not. No. So
No, but I
so
don't think you would describe it as mental.
so how would I rephrase it? Because that's what most of these conversations are. It's me
Oh,
rephrasing.
societal. It is a societal disability. It is based on would it even be an environmental disability? But even that I don't quite like.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because it is
But I said we've got physical disabilities, societal
yeah.
disabilities, and mental disabilities.
Yeah, you did.
So yes,
Mm,
societal disabilities, but they are the ones that most people are discussing. Physical
yeah.
disabilities are ones like you've only got one leg, or I've only got
Mm.
one eye or one ear. Mental
So what would you
disabilities.
class as a mental disability then? Like what examples do you have of a mental disability?
The way that I would describe mental for me, again, looking at it
Mm,
from an ecological perspective, is instead of it being an internal representation,
mm,
depending on how you interpret representation, it would be the relationship. So the relationship between the organism and the environment is
yeah.
perception. And so I would see a mental disability as a difference in perception to the way other organisms perceive. So this could sound, again, this is me working this through. This could sound uh, extreme, very extreme, but different organisms perceive the world in different ways because of the
Yeah.
constraints of the organism, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Flies have different types of eyes, birds have wings, etc. If there is a human that perceives the world in a drastically different way to another human, are they arguably a different species, type of organism? Probably not, because
No.
physically, in the way that we categorize things, no, they are still the same. Which means they are the same organism, but they are perceiving the world drastically different.
Mm,
So if they are psychotic,
mm.
they are perceiving the world drastically different. Perception can still be explained through the relationship, but the
Yeah.
relationship is drastically different when they are perceiving the affordances in the environment.
So how do you do, I mean we're measuring again, which is
Yeah,
obviously not.
but that's what a disorder is, because a
Yeah.
physical disability, well, if every human had one eye, it'd be normal. And my blindness is different from other people's blindness. So even though it's a physical disability, it's not as debilitating as someone else's blindness. And obviously less debilitating as someone else's blindness. So there is always a measure, a scale of this. Where do I draw the line? I
Mm.
imagine is the question.
Yeah.
I, because it's the ecological approach, I don't have a line to draw,
Mm.
but what I would look at is their behavior and how their behavior matches to, or matches, pairs to the amount of constraints that are required to get the expected behavior out. So
Mm.
if you have like a door in front of you and the goal is to walk through the door, and the person has no intention of walking through the door and hits their head on the wall, like next
Mm.
to them, how many constraints do you have to add to that environment? Additional constraints you have to add to that environment to get them to self-organize their way through that corridor? Does it quite literally have to be you put them in a chair and they have to shuffle themselves in the chair with their arms constrained
Yeah.
to the door? Like how many constraints do you have to add? That would be the way that I would go about doing it. Ethically and morally, that's not right, obviously.
Mm.
Uh, but that is what I imagine as someone that has a mental disorder. There are so many constraints that you have to add in to get a, again, air quotes here, simple task completed.
Mm.
If the, and I would probably add caveat there, those constraints added by another person.
Yeah, they can't be
Yeah.
self-added.
Yeah. If it's a
Yeah,
constraint added by the person themselves, then it's part of self-organization.
yes.
In which case, if it's a self-organizing constraint, then it's a societal issue.
Yes, yeah. Which is often a lot of the ADHD, neurodiverse, like those
Yeah.
are often self-organized. Like we're talking like
I've decided to do this because of
mm,
that,
yeah.
and the because
I've
of that
decided to
thing is
get
the
I've decided to get a stick to help me with walking because I am unbalanced a lot of the time, and sometimes I can easily walk in like fall over or stumble, and it could be it. When I got my stick for my walking for many years, it was less about me and more about society. It was perceived that as like, yes, it helps me to, you know, stumble a bit less. I've got something to lean on, but also it was a societal, hey, I might fall, or hey, I might not walk as clearly or as much as expected.
yeah,
So it was bought for me, but also for the perception of others to go, oh, I see. Oh, I see. That's why. And
yeah,
why I might walk around a bit, like why I will self-organize in this specific way. It's a sign, it's a signal, it's to show that because you can't tell unless you can see my hearing aids in my ears, which most of the time you can't because they're tiny. You won't know.
yeah. Communicating to other people.
Yeah, self-organizing. Yay.
Yeah. Self-organizing systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like this should be in a book.
Yeah, I know, right?
Um,
It is because I'm starting to think about writing it from a business perspective, but yes.
you're starting to think about writing it. No,
Okay, fine. I am
you're
writing it
thinking.
as I'm going. Good point. Fair enough. Well made. I am writing it. I have not put I was gonna say pen to paper. I have not put fingers to keyboard and started to actually write a thing, but I have been writing it and going through the process of
You've been thinking
writing.
about the book.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think there's the ecological paradigm,
Mm.
although it isn't.
Oh, 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 ecological paradigm. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Add some confusion on that one. Well, it is. I mean,
yeah.
even though it's described as ecological approach, ecological psychology, ecological dynamics, depending on whoever you're going to talk to, it is a paradigm shift. As Julia
Mm,
mentions multiple times, it is a paradigm shift. It completely changes the way that we think about the world. The same as when there was a paradigm shift of, hey, the world isn't flat.
mm,
Like massive paradigm shift.
mm,
Oh, satellites could be a thing, and you can't fall off the edge of the world. Like, that's a massive paradigm shift in the way that we perceive, understand the world. I think the ecological approach is a paradigm shift, but it's going to take a hell of a lot of convincing and a lot of time
mm, mm,
for it to be recognized as that. Um, and so I think, and obviously there's going to be people that argue against it, which I totally understand, but a lot of the arguments that are, quote, against it are they're either against it because they're unfamiliar with the views that are an ecological version of the views that are being argued for, which could sound a bit tongue twister there, or a bit confusing. But for example, someone recently reached out to me and they were asking about how because visual perception is typically discussed in the ecological approach, they said, well, this doesn't work because we can touch things and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, ecological haptics. Uh, it's a thing. I just haven't spoken about it yet in the videos on the channel. And
mm,
and so the ecological approach has eh, answers. I don't like answers, but they have a way to explain most, if not
Mm,
all, things in some way that
mm,
is different. Do they
yeah,
have answers? No, but no one has
no,
answers, and
I don't think that's possible.
there's only like what, maybe 1,000 researchers of the ecological approach worldwide. There's like hundreds of thousands in the Cogswalk.
Yeah.
Um,
In another world, I would just spend all my time as a researcher.
yeah, that'd be great fun. Um, but yeah, maybe you buy one of the books for Christmas and you read through that. 'Cause obviously you've read through the Intro to Ecological Psychology. Maybe you read through some of the others.
Mm.
I'm looking at buying the Gibson 79 rewrite for Christmas.
I
So
think oh no, I used to have that one as part of the app that I got, which gave me a bunch
yeah,
of
I
papers.
interesting segue. The digital books, even though I like them, I also don't like them.
Mm.
I listen to them faster. I can still understand, still troubleshoot and go through them. And then the ebook versions, again, I can read them. I can go through, highlight, move it over to Obsidian writing. But I feel like the relationship between myself and the book, myself and the physical book,
Mm.
um, has something non-obvious.
I have to agree because I had a great big tantrum about the activist affordances book the other day. Because I have the physical copy, I haven't opened it recently. I saw it today. I was like, I'm going to sit with that in a minute, and so I went and found the digital book. But the digital book has been split up into every single chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just fucking stupid and annoying. I don't like that. So fine, I will download each chapter and then I will combine all of the chapters into one PDF so I can look through the whole goddamn book when I want to. But also, there is something about the physical book.
I think I think because it is in the world that I live in,
Mm.
there is an ever-going like there is an ongoing relationship between myself and the physical book. Maybe that's why I have tons of books on my desk. It's just like,
I
hey, do this.
it,
Hey, do this.
it reminds me of a conversation that I was having with someone yesterday.
The organized
Um,
mess.
around like books being like they've written the book, this person had wrote the book, but it's not the end of the book. They said use this book, write on it, scribble on it, draw on it. Like I want you to take my things not as facts but as guidance and to write your own things on top of that. Like make notes, highlight things. And that was like quite a thing for me here. I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I just don't do it because you don't draw on textbooks. You don't do that. That's not
Told at
okay.
school.
Yeah, you're like, you don't draw on textbooks, they're not yours. I'm like, yeah, but these are mine. Why can't I? Which is why, like, I was thinking about that as you were talking of like, yeah, maybe I'll just grab the textbook and then instead of highlighting it in Zotero, even though it's less convenient to have it into like my apps and stuff, maybe it's time to do that because then I can scribble and put my own notes and thoughts and link it to ideas inside of it.
I mean, I have 3 bookmarks in this book at the moment.
Mm,
And I run with the bookmarks as I'm going through. But obviously, I've read this book 3 times, or will be 3 times soon.
mm,
And the bookmarks have moved places. And I've paid attention to significant sentences at different points in time. So I
mm,
personally don't highlight the book because I know the highlight will grab my attention the next time I read it.
mm,
So I keep the book clean. However, each time I've read this book, I know I have paid attention to different lines. Some of the lines are the
mm,
same, but some of the lines are different because of my relationship with the book has evolved over time,
mm,
and my relationship with the ideas has evolved over time. And so now I'm reading through this the third time and I'm making videos in different chapters. Some of the lines are far more significant to me now than they were
mm,
the first or second time I read it.
mm.
Whereas if it was on Zotero, the highlights would be there.
Yeah.
And when I go through something on my digital app, I feel like I've done it.
Yes.
Like there
Feels
is a
complete.
yeah, there is a check mark that's been completed for it.
Mm.
I've actually
Yeah.
physically ticked it done with a tag also,
Yeah.
but with a book, it's just always there. I'm like, hey, yeah, I can go to that chapter. Like the book Cognitive. Oh, pick up one hand, that one. The cognitive psychology book. It's not thin. I haven't read it from back to front, but
Mm.
I go back to different chapters, different pages in that book all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean I open that book probably two, three times a week.
Mm.
Do I follow the cognitive psychology approach? No. So why do I go to it? Because there's ideas in there that I want to challenge or I want to confirm, I want to look for a reference for something, especially as
Mm.
I'm reading through other text as well. And just knowing that it's there and I can just, oh yeah, there it is, that's the thing, cool, and then read through and I don't know, because it's there, it's not necessarily easier because I could just search on my esoteric because it's there as well. But yeah, there's a non-obvious cause that makes it nice, which is why I want the physical book, which is why I've got another physical book coming either today or tomorrow, which is Turby's lectures. So I will probably
Oh.
buy a thesaurus and a dictionary to
Yeah.
help me read that book. But
Yeah. 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 Oh.
or you could just watch my videos when they come out and be like, "Oh, okay, that's what you meant."
Yeah, that's probably what I will do. But it's almost like your videos are kind of like the notes and the scribbles.
Yeah, well, they're my notes and my scribbles.
Hmm.
So one of the reasons that I'm actually getting the Turvey book is because Rob Gray, Andrew Wilson, and Marianne Davies are doing. They're going through the chapters. I think they're at chapter 21 now, but they've been doing it live streams on Rob Gray's YouTube channel and LinkedIn. He's doing it on StreamYard. Um, but they've been going through it and talking about it. And although I love the live streams, like love the live streams, they skip over a lot of the words. They skip over a lot of Turvey's points, and they summarize their opinions and give their like external thoughts too. So it's more of a three-way commentary over the chapters
Yeah.
than an exploration of the chapters. My videos, I think, are a step further. They are an exploration of the chapters through me.
Mm.
Um, but I'm buying the book because I want to do the reading and I want to have my views on it. Like I'm even going back and watching my videos of the previous chapters to help me remember some of the intricacies and the relationships that I had with the points in the earlier chapters, which
Mm.
is really cool. It's kind of being like my own PKM system on YouTube. Uh,
Ooh, PKM, yeah.
to put a buzzword in there.
Buzzword.
But uh but yeah, and I think as you say, the Turvey lectures would be similar. It would be probably won't be chapter one as one video. It'll probably chapter one, chapter one, part two, worded in a different way, and through me,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
which I think if you look at it from the outside, could be like marketing. And
Mm.
marketing the book. Hey, this is what I understand this book to be like. Maybe go read it yourself.
Mm.
Rather than someone looking at the book going, damn, they're complicated big words, yet no.
Yeah.
But we shall see. Because some people don't want to buy a book, especially a big book that's like 50 quid.
Yeah.
And
They
then not
are
read it.
they are pricey. They are pricey books, I have to say.
Yeah. So yeah, and obviously it's free education as well. So anyone that is interested in the ideas, which maybe come from some of the other videos or conversations that happen online, like you mentioned last week, if you go, oh yeah, what were those traditional approaches, assumptions? Oh yeah, how did the ecological approach change those assumptions? And what are those other assumptions that the ecological approach make that no one ever references because they're often ignored?
Yeah.
Right, the small little caveat on the tabula rasa. Yeah, no, we don't actually believe in the tabula rasa, but we do believe knowledge is gained from experiences, and that's before birth. What, before birth? How can you gain knowledge before birth? Through the womb. What? Yeah, exactly. That's the ecological approach. Oh, I thought it was just direct perception. No.
Yeah, so cool.
But anyway,
It is a paradigm shift.
yeah, yes, it is.
So good.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to add to?
No,
Mm,
all good.
cool. What is the time? Oh, it is. Don't know. Morgan's not telling me. 10:30. It was telling me I had a pop up over it. Right. So, see you all next week, maybe.
Bye.
Bye.